Zaldrizes buzdaris gosdau.
This is the first opening scene of this episode, right? We saw Daemon. Daemon is innocent. Daemon didn't kill his wife. Daemon is an opportunist and he banged his head in. But if you aren't aware, Daemon is a good guy. And we're going to get a bit of a redemption arc. But House Royce, they are of the Vale, of the First Men, right? They are actually sort of gatekeepers of the Gates of the Eyrie in the main story. And there's a fear in Sansa in her POV when she's pretending to be Peter Baelish's daughter, right? There's a fear in Sansa that when Bronze Jan Royce shows up, that he would recognize her because Bronze Jan has actually been to Winterfell and has seen Sansa, and all that aside, he's called Bronze Jan Royce, and this armor worn by Rhea Royce in this episode has got these runes on it. If you're unaware, they're the First Men. The First Men didn't exactly have a traditional written history where they would write down everything that happened and their beliefs and their gods and all that good shit. They didn't write it down on paper. Instead, they would carve runes into trees. They would carve runes into rocks. And that's why it's very hard to determine the history of the First Men in George's A Song of Ice and Fire books. So there's a bit of mysticism with them as well. I believe there's some old god magic linked into the reason why the First Men would carve it on their armor as for extra protection. So it was really cool. And that's probably something you may have missed. And if you're unaware, that's why I call these videos. These are things you may or may not have missed. And I don't necessarily talk about every single thing in the episode. I just talk about stuff that either piqued my interest or something that I think definitely needs to be explained and added with my commentary. Now that I've got this video started and I have your attention, please do me a massive favor and slap a like on this video because the like goal is 420. And then also make sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. All the way to an 11. Spinal Tap reference. And the main reason why I say that is only if you're a fan of my channel, right? And then also leave me a comment down below. I'm sure there's probably something that I mentioned in this video that you want to share your thoughts with, or some mistake that I make. And, I deserve to be corrected because I'm a bad boy and I want you to spank me verbally, right? But no, all that aside, I say that, and specifically I say it, if you're a fan of my channel, is because YouTube is shadow banning my content. You probably had to desperately search for this video and dig through it, even people that are subscribed. I've been getting comments of people saying they were originally subscribed to me, but then YouTube unsubscribed them. They had to go and search my videos by typing in Sir Hunt's House of the Dragon. Now, that's not that common of a thing on YouTube, but I've been making House of the Dragon for 2 years. As a matter of fact, there's also people that have been telling me this, confirm this. I've made some of the most House of the Dragon content that before the show was even really a thing, before the cast was even out, right? So all that aside, that means my videos should be promoted somewhat in YouTube algorithm, but they aren't. I'm being shadow banned. So one of the ways to beat shadow banning is by asking people to interact with your videos and make sure they subscribe, because if I can reach 100,000 again here on YouTube, I already have the silver play button, so that glamorized part of it is gone. But it just helps me combat YouTube from shadow banning my channel. But if you can't do any of that, thank you for watching. Now, it looked like initially in my live stream breakdown, speaking of which, I linked that down below in the description, so make sure you go watch that. And also consider following me on Twitter and then on Instagram. I post a lot there, and a lot of times I'll give people a heads up on when I'll drop a video. And then also consider checking out my Patreon. That's also linked down below in the description. But initially, I thought Rhea was going to try to shoot Daemon with the bow and arrow. But no, it looks like she grabs it in a desperate attempt to try to knock him away. And when she does that, she unintentionally spooks her horse. So we don't really know what Daemon's intentions were, aside from the point of maybe reaching out to his wife and trying to settle her horse because he's a very intimidating person. And at some point during the filming process, they figured out that Matt Smith can act with his face without saying any words. Dude is intimidating as shit. It's funny because Sir Otto has the words, and that's what makes his demeanor extra scary. But Daemon is just an impending and imposing force on screen and doesn't even have to say words. Tremendous job, Matt Smith. You're doing amazing, my dude. But yeah, so like I was saying, we don't actually know what Daemon's intentions were. Maybe he was going to settle his wife's horse and eventually throw some verbal abusive language back at her. Maybe they're going to verbally battle and have what's known in the books as a battle of wits. Lots of characters do this, Tyrion and Cersei in particular. Speaking of which, I want to talk about Tyrion and Cersei, a similar dynamic that we're going to see between Rhaenyra and the older version of Alicent, right? in the next episode in the promo. I'll probably either mention that in this video or in the next video I make that will break down the episode 6 promo. Holy crap, we got that time jump coming up. But yeah, you all let me know what you think down below. Do you think Daemon was going to kill his wife regardless, and that's the only reason why he rode Caraxes all the way up there, and he wouldn't have done that regardless? And it looks like they're filmed in a very similar location to where they normally film the Vale at, because that was looked like the trail of the Gates of the Eyrie for the TV show that, strong vibes of when Arya and Sandor were riding down that same trail. But do y'all think, let me know down below in the comment section, do y'all think Daemon was going to kill his wife regardless? I mean, he did that. He smashed her head with a rock, but she probably would have died there, because remember, she refused the dude Gerald, who shows up later on at Rhaenyra's wedding. She refuses him from going with her. Maybe if he had rode with her to begin with, she would still be alive. And she throws insults at Daemon the whole time, and it's kind of like maybe he initially would have just talked to her, but then she sort of like was pushing her luck, like he's the blood of the dragon, and obviously they're known for having not the best types of personalities. I don't know. Let me know down below. What do you think? Strong Arya and Lyanna vibes from when Rhea Royce was riding in the Vale. She's a really good rider. That horse, she knew that horse very well. It's kind of crazy that it bucked on her like that. But she was definitely going to hit Daemon with the bow instead of shoot him. She was going to hit him because he was so close. Now, another thing that you may or may not have noticed, I'm sure you noticed this, is that Harwin and Clubfoot, Larys, right? Larys is basically this show's version of Varys, right? But basically, we heard from them that House Hightower puts green flames out when they declare war. Now, in the books, this episode is actually called We Light the Way. That's House Hightower's motto. But in the books, that's not necessarily something that happens, right? They don't necessarily have a green flame, but House Hightower's colors are green, and that's how the greens versus the blacks is established, right? So in the book, Fire and Blood, Alicent wears a green dress to a certain event, and Rhaenyra wears a red and black dress to a certain event. And this was for the TV show The Wedding, right? For the moment when the Queen's party is established as the Greens is when Alicent walked into Rhaenyra's wedding, and she's like, all eyes on me, picture, the paper, right? When she walks in, that's the moment when she's established as the Greens. So it seems as though Ryan Condal took that one step further and was like, yo, let's make the emblem for House Hightower on this show. When they declare war, the Hightower burns green. So also I noticed when Sir Otto was leaving that the sigil on the horse saddle of his has a green flame. So I don't know if they're actually saying that, for this show, the actual Hightower in Old Town itself, the normally regular colored flame, they turn that green when they're declaring war, or when they start rocking green sigils, that's when they're declaring war. I think that'll be something to further explore, because if they only start rocking the green sigils when they're declaring war, that means that the fact that Sir Otto's leaving is a declaration of war. The fact that he's been removed as Hand of the King is him actively saying that I'm going to rebel in certain small ways against the king, specifically by wearing this green patch. All right, now most people probably noticed this, but I have to throw this in. In Westeros, when a Targaryen king, when Blood of the Dragon, when the Blood comes to visit you, you go outside, you put on your best shoes, and you stand there and you say, hello, my king, how may I lick your ass today? Corlys said nothing because he wasn't there. The king heard the wind. The king had to walk his leprosy heaven ass all the way up to high tide. It's not called high tide because it's in a low location and there's no stairs. No, he had to walk his happy ass all the way up there. And then the king Corlys didn't even come outside. He sent out his daughter Lena and one of his nephews or cousins, right? It hasn't exactly been established. I don't know what this dude's name is, but it's just hilarious. That is a huge, massive sign of disrespect, and the king never really addresses it. This shows you, for this series, how powerful House Velaryon is. But really, it doesn't matter how powerful they are. The only reason why they're able to do this, the only reason why Corlys and Rhaenys are able to do this, and Rhaenys acts like she doesn't know what the fuck is up because she goes, cousin, hi, cousin, how are you? Like, I don't know. I know my accents are bad, but basically she pretends like she doesn't know, and same with Corlys, right? The only reason why they're able to do this is because they were skipped over and scorned so many times, and the king has come a-begging. The king could have summoned them, but he came himself. And he not only came himself, but he was also humbled by having to walk all the way there. And they pretended, or honestly didn't know, how ill he was. So maybe if they had known how sick he was, they wouldn't have necessarily done that. But that is a huge sign a massive no-no in Westerosi culture. You were supposed to go and greet the king. And certainly, he doesn't come a-calling to you. Like, it was rare as hell that Robert went all the way north in the Game of Thrones TV show and in the first Game of Thrones book. It was such a massive deal. The king never does shit like that. Like, especially Robert, he was lazy as hell and just drank all the time, right? So it's a big deal. The king spent so much time at Winterfell in the books, he actually sort of bankrupted Winterfell. And when Catelyn is dealing with, grieving over the fact that obviously Breanne has been pushed out of the window and he's paralyzed and he's in a coma, she has to sort of deal with, the expenses that the king costs for House Stark. So that's how unprepared they were for the king showing up. That's how rare it is that he did it. And the only reason why he did it is because Ned is such a close friend to him. So it's kind of crazy that this is this show's version of that, right? What happened in episode 1 for Game of Thrones with House Stark showing up, House Stark treating with the king. Robert Baratheon shows up and sort of, says, yo, Ned, what's up, right? That's it. You see how Ned brought his entire family out there and then some, right? That didn't happen. And the show's version of that just shows you how much power they have. But ultimately, still, he's the king. And, he allowed them to do that because they had been slighted not only at the Great Council of 101 AC, but also when he turned down their 12-year-old daughter. Now, at this point, we're probably around halfway through the video, maybe a little bit more. I want to say, if you want a full in-depth breakdown, if you want 32 different things broken down, I do that in my live streams. And I don't do that in these videos because it would be like an hour and a half, and that's how long my live stream is. So I just did that. So please, it's linked down below in the description. Please go watch it. Please. You have my not only full, unadulterated thoughts, but also that's where I first come up with ideas for stuff that I sometimes forget to mention in these videos. So if you want really a totally different experience than these videos, please go and watch that live stream. Okay, now let's talk about the conniving and whatever that wedding was. Holy crap, that whole thing was okay, so Dothraki, it's considered a dull affair unless there are 3 deaths at a Dothraki wedding. That's why those people brutally kill each other in front of Daenerys. And it's way more traumatic to read in the books through Daenerys' POV because she's a little girl. She's 11. She's 12. She's Lena age on the TV show, right? In the books. So when she's watching all this and when she's being married to Khal Drogo and she's being gifted the dragon eggs, it's just a very traumatic, crazy experience. That's kind of what I felt like as a viewer in this episode. Shout out to Claire Kilner, the director of this episode, and Ryan Condal, Miguel Sapochnik, and Greg Yantis, and everybody who's Greta Patel, everybody who's responsible for this show, because it's amazing. You guys are taking stuff from the original series, recreating it for this series, and may either unintentionally or be intentionally doing it. It just shows you that the person who's writing this story just knows Martin's work so well. And it's actually a team of writers. The main one is Ryan Condal. That's George's man. Dude, you're amazing. Ryan Condal. If I got to meet you, I'd probably be just as nervous as I was as if I met George R. Martin. But yes, so this wedding was the Velaryons at court. Joffrey Lonmouth should have kept his long mouth closed. I've never seen anybody lose a skull on screen before quite that way. That's my one gripe with this entire series, is that Kristen Cole was able to walk away from that event without being immediately thrown in chains. Now, Joffrey House Lonmouth is not like a big deal, so to speak, but you're still that's someone who's named the protector of, who's now the Prince Regent, King Regent. Rhaenyra's the Princess of Dragonstone, and he's basically married to her at that moment. And this guy's really close to him, and Kristen Cole's really close to Rhaenyra. But ultimately, he beat the shit out of him. Proximity, right? You could argue he's going to kill himself. Alicent stopped him, and that's the reason why he's able to do it, because the Queen is going to vouch for him. But that was intense though. It was amazing to watch, insanely as just a show watcher. It was amazing. It was awesome. I felt like I was getting out some angst that I had at Lonmouth for being so cocky. Knight of Kisses, right? He's a badass fighter, and you can tell that that's why he just feels so comfortable talking to Cole that way. But it's kind of I can't believe I had to suspend my disbelief a little bit harder in that scene, so to speak. Do you all agree with me down below in the comment section? I will say that the entirety of the sequence I loved. I loved the fact that Lionel was like, yo, Breakbones, get him. Oh, where my dogs at? Like, he literally just told his son to go whoop ass, and that's what he did. Badass. And then also, in the promo, we saw Harwin beating up Cole, and I'm gonna save that talk for another video. But it's nuts to see this much of a chaoticness going on. Like, I totally felt like Rhaenyra could potentially be damaged. I knew something weird was happening, the fact that she was shoved. It's the cinematography was beautiful, the way that we didn't, as a watcher, didn't really know what was going on until we saw Cole beating the shit out of Lonmouth. Like, we knew it was going to happen, but he let Joffrey walk past him, and Laenor was in such love with this dude, Joffrey, that he names one of his kids after him. Not the first two, the third one, right? So the first two are Jacaerys and then Lucerys, who loses his eye, and then we all know what happens to him at the end of the season, and then the other one is Joffrey, and that's the baby that we see the older version of Rhaenyra continuing to hold. And eventually she marries Daemon. We've seen that, right? And they have children as well, right? So it'll be pretty intense to see the relationship between Cole and Laenor after this, obviously, because he, killed someone who he loved. And in the books, that happens at a tournament. Basically, Criston Cole savagely beats everyone. He breaks Harwin's collarbone, and Mushroom names Harwin, who's named normally, the strongest man in the Seven Kingdoms, or Breakbones, because he breaks a lot of people's bones. Mushroom dubs him Broken Bones because he gets his collarbone broken by Cole. So they switched that around, as well as what he does to Lonmouth. And basically what he does to Lonmouth is he beats him savagely in a melee, and then a few days later, Joffrey Lonmouth dies of his wounds. So they kicked that up to a 10 on this show. They're kicking the king having leprosy up to a 10 on this show. What's up with all this fainting? He's being poisoned. And I'm not even going to talk about that at all in this video, because I have a Maester video coming out, and I'm probably going to do a podcast on the Maester conspiracy, because there are still comments where people are like, yo, I don't believe you. The Maesters are innocent. Why would they poison Viserys? He doesn't even ride a dragon. Well, to that, read the books. Oh yeah, and then another thing that you probably missed, or didn't necessarily miss, this is just a theory of mine. The reason why we didn't get to see as much of the cool things in High Tide, and when I say that, is basically Corlys the Sea Snake went on 9 voyages all over the world of Westeros. He even went to a Shy, right? He's seen so much stuff, and he's a collector. We saw the Kragus Crabfeeder masks in his collection. We didn't get to see that much of it, and that's because later on in the story, High Tide is ransacked, and when that happens, we get to see all that stuff destroyed. And then we're also probably going to get to see when Corlys initially picks it up on the Sea Snake show, and Steve Toussaint is probably going to be recast for that show, and then maybe he'll come back and play himself in like the final season, which will probably take place right before the beginning of the show, which would ultimately, I think, where we could see the younger version of Alicent, played by Emily Carey, and the younger version of Rhaenyra, played by Millie Alcock, without having to do flashbacks on this show. But there's always a chance that we could have a flashback in the final seasons to maybe add some more stuff to the backstory, or next season, because there's supposedly only going to be 3 or 4 seasons of this show, and honestly, it takes place from 129 AC to 131 AC, so that's not that long of a time for a story to happen. And really, it's just 129 to 130 AC, where the most of the dancing with the dragons and the Lords of Westeros, where all that happens. So to clarify, that's the reason why I think we really hadn't got to explore that much of High Tide yet, is because we will explore it in a later season when we have something as what's known as, what I call it, the sacking of High Tide. Okay, so 2 more things I was disappointed with, and I'm going to let you know right now, because I'm going to go on a little bit of a spiel. The 2 things are not real grabs, but one of them I didn't get to see Vhagar. So when I say not real grabs, it's like it's not something I'm actually mad about. The one thing I was mad about was how Cole was able to just walk around freely after that, and ultimately he's going to, not having that many repercussions for killing a man in front of the king at Rhaenyra's wedding. That's a kind of something's got to happen. We'll find out. But the other thing is, we didn't get to see Vhagar. What the hell did Laena not ride her dragon? And you know what? I just figured it out literally right now. Vhagar doesn't fit in the dragon pit, and that was in King's Landing. So that's why Vhagar wasn't ridden by Laena in this episode. But we do get to see Laena riding Vhagar. The older actor who's playing Laena, Laena's going to marry Daemon, right? The older actor, we do get to see her ride. We see her riding Vhagar in the trailer for the next episode, so that's amazing. That was the first gripe. And then the second one is the fact that the dancing the dancing. Not the dancing itself. The dancing was cool, but Mushroom. I thought, okay, this guy's Mushroom. Okay, it's not Mushroom. We could see him in the background at other moments. We may have seen him in the past couple of episodes and the past, obviously, 5 episodes. Well, before this one. So the past 4 episodes, and I just missed it, although I doubt it because I've seen each episode like 4 times now, right? But what's going on? I wanted my boy Mushroom. I thought he's drumming. Perfect dick joke reference. He could easily drop one of the sticks and they have a quick moment where he notices Rhaenyra is feeling down because obviously she's at her wedding and she's uncomfortable and she doesn't like this, and he just drops and said, if you like, Mushroom could use my dick to fuck your husband or something like that so that she doesn't have to do the bedding ceremony. I thought that was going to be the perfect opportunity to introduce Mushroom, but it didn't happen. And like I said, at the beginning of my complaining session for this video, which is not a real complaining session at all because I love the show. I love it so much. I love it. I love it so much. I love it so much. If you agree with me, let me know down below. I feel like I'm a crazy person when I'm watching it and when I'm doing my live streams. I love everything about it. But that would have been the perfect opportunity to have a Mushroom scene. It's not a real gripe because I'm pretty sure Ryan will do something like that. Like he said, Mushroom is either a background character or a character with scenes. And what that means, in my opinion, is it's probably both. All right, so we're at 20 minutes. We're literally 20 minutes. I'll mention one more thing, but before I do that, please slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be 420. Make sure you're subscribed and then also turn your notifications on so you get alerted every single time I drop a video throughout the Wait for House of the Dragon Season 1, the next episode, or Season 2, which is coming up because now we only have 4 episodes left. And I'm telling you, I make content all throughout the long night, which is what that wait is known as on this channel. The Wait for House of the Dragon Season 2, the Wait for the next House of the Dragon episode, and then also the wait for the next Winds of Winter book, the next Song of Ice and Fire book. So in order to, help yourself combat that boredness, subscribe to my channel. I promise you I'm going to continue to keep making content. Also, suggest to me down below someone who you want to see me have as a guest on my House of the Dragon podcast. I did the first episode by myself, but I want to have guests on from here on out because I want it to be like a long form conversation, sort of like what I do in the live streams by myself on Sundays, right? So the last thing that I want to mention for this episode is the fact that we had that little old rat walk up and lick that little old pile of blood. Now, rats are associated with cheese because you use cheese to catch rats. There were several rats that were seen in this episode, and yes, you could say that that's because people are doing some conniving and some sneaking. In particular, Laurie's clubfoot is a butthole this episode, but ultimately, blood and cheese is going to happen in Game of Thrones. In House of the Dragon, Season 2. It might happen in House of the Dragon, Season 1, but that would be just too nuts. You would have the death of Lucerys and Storm's Inn, and then blood and cheese, ultimately the death of the King Aegon's son and heir, Jaehaerys. That would be too much for one season. I don't know if it's going to happen, but that's what this little thing is foreshadowing literally right here. So what happens is Lucerys dies, and in retaliation, Daemon hires Mysaria, and she hires someone known as a rat catcher, known as Blood and Cheese, and oh my god, Blood and Cheese, okay, so Blood used to work for the Gold Cloaks, but he's kicked out of the Gold Cloaks because he raped someone, right? Cheese is a rat catcher who's hired by the Red Keep to get rid of all the rats. The fact that we saw a rat walk up and start licking the blood in front of people, they're going to hire a rat catcher. We're going to see Cheese this season. We probably have already been introduced into Blood, and I was saying this in my live stream. He's probably the dude that was yelling out, or at least the show version of Blood will be, and he might have been Sir Luther Largent. Sir Luther Largent might be making a role later on in the show, but the guy who was yelling out in the first episode, rapist, murderer, thief, the guy who was doing that may potentially be Blood as well, but we will see because this scene was so glorious. I'm not saying that I'm excited to see a child die. No, not at all. It's terrible. I'm a father myself, but look, this scene is going to be probably harder to watch than when some of the dragons die. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been the longest breakdown that I've done all season. Please do me a favor if you enjoy it and share it on social media. Slap a like on it. Help me defeat YouTube shadow ban in my channel for literally no freaking reason. I've not done anything to earn a shadow ban, and they're still doing it. If you don't believe me, go in incognito mode, and you will see after you type in House of the Dragon that none of my videos show up. It's important that you sign out of your account, or you go into private mode, or you go to incognito mode and search for House of the Dragon. You'll see none of my videos pop up. You have to do something like type in my name with House of the Dragon in order for it to pop up, and that's just unfair because, like I said, I haven't done anything to deserve a shadow ban. So please help me out. My name's Mark. Thank you for watching. Special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/OurHuntsReviews. And a special thank you to you for watching. And if you're a big fan, consider joining my Patreon, because I'm actually going to start releasing content early on there. I actually already did. I released my the first episode of my podcast there 3 hours early, and I'm going to probably release it a few days early, episode 2 at least, right? I just need to finish getting it recorded. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Alon, zaltrizas, pusdare, ixos, davor.